gonna start by opening up the Arduino program, and I'm gonna paste here some variables, which are the variables we're gonna use before the void setup. And the first one is for the servo motor. We're gonna declare it as my servo. The next one is the time. The next one is for the potentiometer. And for the sensor, these are the variables for the buttons. And there are 6 buttons, so here they are. We use the variable bool for the buttons. And here in the void setup, we're gonna start by declaring some LEDs. The LEDs are declared like this, with an output, and always remember to close with this sign just once. And the LEDs go from 8 to 13 and an additional number of 18. So I'm gonna copy all the LEDs here so I don't have to write them again. So it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 18. Okay, so these 2 lines are for the comments, and these are the LEDs. We also have 3 RGBs, which use the same code, but instead of a number, we have to change it for an A1, A2, and A3. So these are the RGBs. Okay, so let's declare the potentiometer, which is the same, but the name for the potentiometer is A4, and instead of an output, we use an input because this is something we move. We do the input, and the sensor is quite the same. It's also an input. Always remember to close. So this is the sensor, and this is the potentiometer. Okay. So next, we're gonna declare the buzzer. Okay, here we had a mistake. It was A4. And next, for the buzzer, we will use the same pin mode, but this will be 0, and it's also an output. And this is the buzzer. Okay. And well, the buttons are a little bit different. It's also pin mode, but we're gonna select it's a 2, and instead of output or input, it's an input pull up. And the numbers go from 2 to 7. So let me copy this again. It's from 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you have to declare the buttons like this. Remember always to include some comments. And now the servo is a little bit different too. You need to write it like this, and the servo will be a 1. And if you want to declare the angles in which it's going to start, it will be an angle of 0. So this is the angle observo, and here you are declaring it. Okay, so I think we're done with the void setup part. We already have all the components that we're going to use. And to start with the void loop part, which is this one, always remember that you need to close your and well, here we're going to declare pore, and analog read will be the A4, because here the A4 is the same as the potentiometer. And we said at the beginning that pore was going to be a variable. So here we're telling the program that pote is the same thing. It will read it as the A4. And here we're going to do the same thing. The IR sensor will be the A4, because here we're telling it that the sensor is the A4, and at the beginning we started declaring it as the R sensor. And the same thing for the buttons, but the only difference is that instead of an analog read, we're going to use a digital read. So B1, here we have to change B2, B3, B4, B5, and B6, which are the same numbers we declared here. And this will read for the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to start to run a code which will turn on the LEDs. To start, if for example you want to leave a space between the code, you need to declare the tempo, which is the one we declared at the beginning. And next, we're going to start by turning on a LED. How do we turn on a LED? We're going to use digital write. Remember that if it doesn't turn on in red, you're doing something wrong. It needs to be digital write. Open a parenthesis. For example, I want to turn on the LED number 13 high, because the value will be turned on. And imagine we also want to turn on two other different buttons. So it would be 13, I don't know, 11, and 12. So this will turn on the buttons. And imagine after that happens, you want another space of time and you want them to turn off. How can you make them turn off? Well, okay, you first need to change the high to a low, and they will be turned off. And well, you could include another delay tempo. And let's continue to the next function, which will be an if. And if you use it, for example, for the buttons, here I'm going to tell the program that if B1, the button B1 is the same as low, by low I mean that if it's pushed, and if also, for example, B5 is low. And let's give another example. Remember always to put a double of these signs. And B6 is also the same as low. We're gonna close and open one of these parentheses, which are over here. We're gonna open one of them here and tell the program what is that we want him to do. For example, I want a tone that is for the buzzer. For the buzzer, you need to put the number 0 and then the frequency you want it to sound. For example, I want it to sound with a frequency of 100. And we want to turn on the LED, the RGB A2 high. And remember to close your parentheses. So when you push these three buttons at the same time, the buzzer will sound and this this RGB will turn on. And the next function will be while. So for while, we're gonna put if the potentiometer, which is the same as pote, is the same as, okay, well, less than 700. And another thing, just always remember to, before the while, remember that you need to remind the program that pote is the same as a for. And here we're gonna open again a sign, one of these ones. And we're gonna tell it that the servo will move to an angle of 90 degrees. And after a delay, after a specific kind of time that we declared at the beginning, it will go to 0 again. So here we're going to take to 0, so it's going to go from 90 to 0. And if you want something else to turn on, imagine you want another RGB to turn on, so you just put a 1 high, and also these A1, A2, and A3 are three different colors, which are red, green, and blue. So you can combine them and make, for example, purple, I don't know. And when you turn on the three of them, a white light will turn on. So here, and at the end, also remind the while that pote is the same as a pin A4. Okay, so close the tab and start a new one, which is also going to be while, but here we're going to start as an R sensor. And we need to remind the program that the R sensor is the analog read of A5. So start by telling it that it's an A5. We're going to use another while, the same as we used it as the other time. But here we're going to use it as for the sensor. So again, if the sensor is less than 1,000, we're gonna need to open another one of these signs. And so if this is happening, example, tone will be at a frequency of 200. Then we're gonna use a delay, and after the delay, here I forgot to put the sign, the buzzer will turn on, but at a frequency of an example of 500. And again, a delay tempo. And after that, if you don't want the buzzer to sound, you use a no tone, declare the number 0, which is the buzzer, and that's it. And imagine you also want to turn on a LED, which is A3, for example. And that we're gonna move on to another function that is for. But before we move on, remember here that if you just make a tiny mistake like this one, it will not read it again. And also you need to remind the program again that our sensor is the same as the pin A5. And close, remember. So for the 4, I don't really understand this function very well for me to explain it to you, but I took this example from another page. And for this, it's a condition that you need to declare a pin. For example, we're declaring the pin number 7 and another pin that will be and another pin will be, I don't know, 2. So here you put another one, this sign, and start with the sign you always use. Okay, so for example, you're gonna turn on the pin number 8. After a delay, and then once more, we're gonna turn the pin, but we're gonna put a low. And if you want a tone for the buzzer of 0 with a frequency of 100, and well, that's it. And you need to remember that you need to close. Here you're closing this one. In this, you might say, what does it close? Well, it closed the void setup. Okay. And well, I think it's done for now. This is the function for, while, and if. For the buttons, you can use the different types of LEDs with the digital write. High and low. High means on, low means turn off. And in the case of the buttons, low means you're pressing it, and high means you're not pressing it. Well, this is the whole code. Arduino Leonardo and COM5, so it works. Okay, so we already uploaded the code, and as you can see, the LEDs that are turning on are the 13, 12, and 11, as we said it in the code. For the next part, we said that if we pressed pin 2, 6, and 7, the green light would turn on and the buzzer would sound at a frequency of 100. So let's try it. As you see, the green light turned on and the buzzer started sounding. So for the next part, we said that if we move the potentiometer, the servo would move and the red and green light would turn on. So let's try it over here. The servo is moving, it turned on. Here is the servo. Let's try it again. So it's moving. Okay, so next is the sensor. We said that it would put our hand in the sensor, which is this one. It would turn the blue light on and the buzzer would sound at a frequency of 500. So let's try. There's the blue light and you heard the sensor. The last buzzer is the 4, which is the pin number 8 would turn on and the buzzer would sound.